Hello, I'm Jeremy Nelson, and I'm joined by Rob Parsons today, and we represent the network and security practice here at Insight. And we're here to talk to you about the modern edge and how you can enable modern infrastructure through a zero trust framework. So, as we talk to a variety of different business leaders, one of the things that we've really identified is that the concept of the enterprise edge is no longer well defined. We're used to being able to easily identify where our centers of data stop and start. But today, those edges are now our branch, the home offices. They're in cloud environments. They're basically anywhere that our employees are and the devices that they use to access critical applications and data for them to be able to conduct their jobs wherever or whenever they happen to be working. So, a lot of the things that we look at is a lot of organizations are on a digital business journey and they're asking themselves these questions. How do they attract and interact more with their customers through modern applications and new user experiences? How do they maintain those customers after they've brought them in and develop relationships to make informed business decisions? And this is through leveraging different applications and platforms driven by data and AI analytics. The next step is how do they ensure that their workforce has the resources that they need to fuel the business forward? And this is really all about that modern workplace, being able to provide productivity, flexibility in where and when they work, and on the devices that are most tailored for them to do and be most productive. And then how do they provide best in class services to their customers and their workforce? And this is all driven through modern infrastructure. No longer do we need to be shackled by the confines of a traditional data center. How do we leverage as a service platforms to make sure that our applications are scaled and built to be able to perform and provide the types of access and experiences that we're looking for? The most important one that we hear a lot about these days is really all around cybersecurity. How do organizations make sure that customer data is safe and that it's being introduced and that we're not introducing unnecessary risk to the business? And then last but not least, how do you streamline operations and stay ahead of the changing market trends? So basically, this is all about how are we leveraging the different assets that we have so that data and computation isn't just happening in one place. How do we drive that to the edge and making sure that the entire infrastructure from end to end is as productive as possible in making real-time decisions for our business? So one of the things that we identify is we've gone through and collected data from a variety of different IT and business leaders and really tried to understand what are some of the challenges that are in front of them that are stretching and pushing the bounds of the traditional network edge. And a lot of organizations really come back to embracing of IoT. More and more, the workloads and the traffic that we're seeing across the traditional networks are more machine to machine than they are user to application like we've seen in the past. As we think about a few years ago, it was a stretch to think of a one-to-one. There was one device for every employee within an organization. We saw that grow to 2-to-1. Now, as we're looking into the 2023, analysts have predicted that we'll be soon a 3-to-1 model, where there will be 3 devices for every one employee connected to the networks that we support. And the amount of data that these applications, devices, and users are generating has grown exponentially, where we're on track to transmit roughly 79.4 zettabytes across these IoT infrastructure fabrics by 2025. So all these users, all these devices, all of this data really push the bounds of the traditional data center. As you can see in this slide here, this is a representation of what the traditional network edge looked like. It was usually really easy to actually draw this box around it. We had our branch offices that were connected through private WAN links back to a corporate data center where we housed firewalls and we centralized access to public assets, whether that be the traditional internet or cloud services. And in order to be able to access any of those applications or data sets remotely, it usually required connectivity through a traditional VPN. And a lot of these features and functions, as we saw the applications explosion, as we saw the amount of cloud consumption increase, not just year over year, but month over month over the past 2 years, a lot of the overall tenets of this traditional data center edge really became limitations to how organizations could grow and transform their digital footprint and experience for their customers as well as for their employees.
Jeremy, thanks for that awesome setup. And I think at the end of the day, there's so much that we have an opportunity to accomplish with what we're talking about in the modern edge. And it begins with providing that seamless access to our users. From there, we optimize their connectivity and we ensure a complete and pervasive security in that environment. So we're talking about how are we bringing together those home offices, the cloud environments, the mobile users in the branch, and enabling them over traditional networks, over Wi-Fi, over 5G and cellular. And at the end of the day, we're giving the people the devices that they're using, the access to the data and applications that they need to be incredibly effective in the roles that they play in their environments. Now, when asked what solutions are being prioritized over the next 12 months, in a survey that we executed, senior IT leadership explained that they were really going after 4G, 5G, and CBRS technologies. They're bringing that additional connectivity mechanism into their enterprise environments. They're also focusing on Wi-Fi 6. How are they bringing more bandwidth and more availability to wireless in their organizations, where that expectation of constant connectivity is becoming king? Core network bandwidth modernization doesn't go away, nor does SD-WAN, and frankly, the opportunity to overlay security with a SASE type of deployment over an SD-WAN infrastructure. And not to be forgotten is microsegmentation. So how are we securing not only the north-south traffic as shown in the original diagram of what previous networks look like, but how are we securing that east-west as well? So huge part of the strategy that organizations are applying in the next 12 months, and very, very relevant to the discussion around the modern edge. So you might ask, what makes up the modern edge? So to me, it's that user and device that is really key. Getting that user and device access to the application and data that they need, but there are a number of layers in between. So we talk about the Wi-Fi and the access switching that connects to the network. So that basic plumbing. How do we enable the IoT infrastructure, the gateways that exist, the sensor networks that are there? How do we do compute? Do we do compute on-prem in a data center or in the cloud? And then how do we route that traffic effectively? Furthermore, how do we manage and automate that so that this is easy to deploy, but also easy to manage? And then most importantly, to Jeremy's point, how do we make it secure? So how do we put in those next generation firewall and cloud security controls? How do we apply that network access control and segmentation to secure north-south and east-west traffic? And then how do we detect and take action against threats in a rapid fashion? Again, bringing the users and devices together with the applications and data that they need to be effective, and providing a layer of observability, giving IT experts the ability to look at what's going on in their environment, optimize and secure in real time. So furthermore, we talk about zero trust, and zero trust is really a mindset and a framework that enables organizations to reduce the risk footprint that they have with any type of access that's given. So a big part of this is managing the identity and the device that is accessing an environment. So who is the user, what type of device, and what type of intelligence are we able to gain from the combination of those two attributes? Moving further, what application and data are they trying to access, and from what environment? Are they accessing it remotely? Are they accessing it on-prem? Are they trying to upload a variety of data to a cloud environment? And what level of trust do we place in that user, device, application data, and environmental combination? From there, the testing and assessment, the governance, risk, and compliance, and the cloud security controls are absolutely key to making a foundation for a zero trust environment. Now, perhaps most important overall is that identity and access management. If you don't have identity, it's very difficult to determine what level of trust to apply. So most organizations start there and grow into that access management, which then gives us interconnects into cloud security as well as deep into policy. Now, not to be forgotten are the endpoint security, the data and app security components, as well as traditional network and edge security. And at the end of the day, all this must operate in a way that's seamless for your organization. So security operations, How do you streamline that? How do you get the visibility that you need? And then how do you manage that? Do you manage it in-house, or do you leverage a third party or a partner to be able to offload some of that that challenging and often time-consuming burden of ongoing operations? So zero trust is absolutely key to making the modern edge something that is readily consumed and highly effective in any environment. So my ask to you is, what's going to be your first step around the modern edge? And I would encourage you to visit solutions.insight.com and get started today. Thank you.